The concert hall buzzed with anticipation as guests filed through the ornate double doors, their evening gowns and tailored suits a sea of elegance against the marble floors. It was a charity gala in Chicago, one of those glittering events where the wealthy gathered under crystal chandeliers to write checks and feel good about their contributions to society. The cause that evening was music education for underprivileged children, a topic that attracted donors who appreciated the arts and wanted to be seen supporting them. Among the crowd was Marcus Holloway, a pianist whose name carried weight in classical music circles. At 42, he had built an empire from his talent, performing in the world's most prestigious venues and amassing a fortune that most musicians could only dream of. His recordings topped classical charts, his tour sold out months in advance, and his opinion on musical matters was sought after by conservatories and critics alike. Marcus moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries with fellow donors. He had perfected the art of appearing interested while mentally rehearsing passages from Rachmaninoff or calculating the return on his latest investment. Tonight's event was another obligation, another opportunity to maintain his public image as a benefactor of the arts. He had written his check before arriving, a generous sum that would earn him recognition in the program and a few minutes of applause during the speeches. As far as he was concerned, that was the extent of his involvement required. The evening's program included a silent auction, a catered dinner with wine pairings that cost more per glass than many families spent on groceries in a week, and scheduled performances by young musicians from the program the gala supported. Marcus had sat through dozens of these showcases over the years. They were usually painful affairs, well-meaning children struggling through simplified versions of classical pieces, while proud parents recorded every missed note on their phones. He had learned to smile politely, offer encouraging words that meant nothing, and check his watch discreetly until he could make his exit. As the dinner concluded and guests settled into their seats for the performance portion of the evening, Marcus positioned himself near an aisle, already planning his departure. The lights dimmed, and the program director took the stage to introduce the first young performer. Marcus barely registered the words, his attention drifting to his phone hidden in his lap, scrolling through emails from his manager about upcoming European dates. Then something caught his attention, a detail that made him glance up from the screen. The director was speaking about the next student with unusual warmth, describing a girl who had joined the program just 8 months earlier despite significant challenges. When Jasmine Williams was guided onto the stage by her teacher, the room fell into a respectful hush. She was 12 years old, small for her age, with her hair pulled back in neat braids tied with blue ribbons. She wore a simple white dress that her grandmother had pressed that morning, and she moved carefully, one hand lightly touching her teacher's arm. Her eyes, though open, had the unfocused quality that Marcus recognized immediately. She was blind. He felt a familiar cynicism rising in his chest. This was a ploy, he thought, a way to tug at heartstrings and open wallets. They would parade this disabled child across the stage, she would play something simple, everyone would weep and applaud, and the donations would pour in. He had seen it before, this manipulation of sympathy disguised as opportunity. Jasmine's teacher helped her to the piano bench and stepped away. The girl sat for a moment, her hands resting in her lap, her head tilted slightly as if listening to something only she could hear. Then she reached forward, her fingers finding the keys with a certainty that surprised Marcus. She did not fumble or search. She simply placed her hands in position and began to play. The piece she had chosen was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a work that demanded both technical precision and deep emotional interpretation. It was not a beginner's piece, not something you would expect from a child who had been studying for less than a year. Marcus sat forward in his chair, his phone forgotten. What he heard was impossible. Jasmine's fingers moved across the keys with a fluidity that spoke of understanding far beyond her years and experience. She was not simply playing the notes correctly, though her accuracy was remarkable. She was interpreting the music, finding the subtle dynamics and emotional shadings that many professional pianists missed. Her left hand provided a foundation that was solid yet sensitive, while her right hand sang the melody with a purity of tone that made the hairs on Marcus's arms stand up. She understood the architecture of the piece, the way Chopin built tension and released it, the conversations between the hands, the moments where the music needed to breathe. The room had gone completely silent. Even the servers who had been clearing tables at the back of the hall had stopped to listen. Marcus found himself holding his breath during the delicate passages, leaning into the music as if he could physically get closer to the source of this unexpected beauty. This was not the performance of a charity case or a feel-good story for donors to share at their next cocktail party. This was the real thing. This was a gift, raw and undeniable, pouring out of a child who by all conventional measures should not have been capable of what she was doing. When Jasmine played the final notes and lifted her hands from the keys, there was a moment of stunned silence before the applause erupted. People rose to their feet, some wiping tears from their eyes. Marcus stood as well, but not out of politeness or obligation. He stood because something had shifted in him, because he had just witnessed something that challenged everything he thought he knew about talent and teaching and what was possible. As Jasmine took her careful bow and was guided off the stage, Marcus made a decision. He needed to speak with this girl, needed to understand what he had just heard. He worked his way through the crowd toward the backstage area, using his status to bypass the usual restrictions, until he found Jasmine sitting in a small room with her teacher and an older woman he assumed was her grandmother. Marcus knocked lightly on the doorframe, and 3 pairs of eyes turned toward him, though Jasmine's gaze settled somewhere past his shoulder. Her teacher, a woman in her 50s named Mrs. Chen, recognized him immediately and stood up, clearly startled that someone of his stature would seek them out. Marcus introduced himself, though it was unnecessary, and asked if he could speak with Jasmine for a moment. Her grandmother, Dorothy Williams, regarded him with the kind of cautious assessment that comes from a lifetime of protecting those you love. She had seen enough wealthy white men making promises to know that words came easy and follow-through was rare. But there was something in Marcus's expression, an intensity that seemed genuine, so she nodded her permission. Marcus pulled up a chair and sat down so he was at eye level with Jasmine. He told her that her performance was extraordinary, that he had been moved by her interpretation of Chopin. Jasmine smiled, a shy expression that transformed her serious face into something radiant. She thanked him quietly, her hands folded in her lap. Marcus asked her how long she had been playing, and when she told him 8 months, he actually laughed in disbelief. It was impossible. Students who had been training since they were 4 years old could not play Chopin like that. He asked her about her practice routine, her training, her musical background. The answers painted a picture that made what he had just witnessed even more inexplicable. Jasmine had grown up in the south side of Chicago, in a neighborhood where gunshots were more common than music lessons. Her family had no piano, no musical tradition, no exposure to classical music beyond what drifted from passing cars or television commercials. She had lost her sight at age 7 to a degenerative condition that the family could not afford to treat properly. For years, she had attended a public school with minimal resources for blind students, getting by with borrowed audiobooks and the kindness of overwhelmed teachers. Then, 8 months ago, a community center in her neighborhood had received a donation of an old upright piano. Jasmine had asked if she could touch it, and the moment her fingers found the keys, something had awakened in her. Mrs. Chen had been volunteering at the community center and had heard Jasmine picking out melodies by ear after hearing them just once. She had offered to give the girl lessons for free, but even she was unprepared for what happened next. Jasmine absorbed everything with a hunger that bordered on obsession. She would ask Mrs. Chen to play pieces for her, then go home and recreate them from memory on the community center piano. She taught herself to read Braille music notation from library books, staying up late into the night tracing the raised dots with fingers that were developing calluses from constant practice. Dorothy worked double shifts as a home health aide to pay for the bus fare to get Jasmine to the community center every day after school. The scholarship to the music program had been a miracle, but even with free tuition there were costs, expenses that stretched the family's budget to breaking. Marcus listened to all of this, and something uncomfortable began to twist in his gut. He thought about his own childhood, the Steinway grand piano that had sat in his family's living room, the private tutors his parents had hired, the summers at prestigious music camps, the connections that had opened doors before he even had to knock. He thought about the casual way he had written his check that evening, the way he had planned to leave early, the contempt he had felt when he assumed Jasmine's performance would be a patronizing display. He asked Jasmine what she wanted to do with her music, and she turned her face toward his voice with an expression of such pure longing that it hurt to see. She wanted to play, she said simply. She wanted to learn everything, every composer, every piece. She wanted to understand how Bach built his fugues and how Beethoven created storms with just black and white keys. She wanted to feel the music in her bones and share it with anyone who would listen. But then her voice dropped, and she added something that Marcus would remember for the rest of his life. She said that Mrs. Chen had told her she should probably just play for enjoyment, that a professional career was not realistic for someone with her circumstances. No conservatory would accept a blind girl from the South Side with only months of formal training, no matter how talented. The world of classical music had its paths, its expectations, its unwritten rules about who belonged and who did not. Jasmine should be grateful for what she had and not dream too big. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He looked at Mrs. Chen, who had the grace to appear uncomfortable. She explained that she had only been trying to protect Jasmine from disappointment, from the harsh realities of an industry that was unwelcoming even to those with every advantage. But Marcus barely heard her justifications. He was thinking about all the mediocre pianists he knew who had careers because of their family names or their connections. He was thinking about the auditions he had judged where technically proficient but soulless playing was rewarded because the candidate had the right pedigree. He was thinking about what the world would lose if Jasmine Williams played only for enjoyment in a community center that might close for lack of funding next year. He made a decision that surprised even himself. He told Jasmine and her grandmother that he wanted to take Jasmine on as a student. He would provide instruction personally at no cost, and he would ensure she had access to a proper piano for practice. Dorothy's eyes narrowed with suspicion. She asked him why, what he wanted in return, what the catch was. Marcus understood her distrust and respected it. He told her the truth. He said that in 25 years of performing and teaching, he had never heard anyone play Chopin the way Jasmine had played it that evening. He said that gifts like hers appeared maybe once in a generation, and it would be a crime against music itself to let circumstance and poverty snuff it out. He said that he had been blessed with advantages his whole life, and maybe it was time he did something that actually mattered with those blessings. Dorothy studied his face for a long moment, looking for the lie, the angle, the hidden agenda. Finally, she asked him one question. She asked if he believed Jasmine could really make it, really compete with all those rich kids who had been training since they could walk. Marcus looked at Jasmine, at this small girl in her pressed white dress who had just played Chopin like she had lived inside the music for lifetimes. He told Dorothy that if Jasmine was willing to work harder than she had ever worked at anything, if she was willing to sacrifice and push through frustration and doubt, then yes, he believed she could not only compete but surpass. He believed she could be exceptional. Jasmine reached out her hand in his direction and Marcus took it. Her grip was surprisingly strong, the hands of someone who had already learned that nothing worth having came easy. She told him she was ready to work. She told him she would practice until her fingers bled if that was what it took. She told him that music was the only thing that made sense to her in a world she could not see, and she would do whatever was necessary to hold on to it. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, some calcified part of himself that had forgotten why he had fallen in love with music in the first place. He had spent so long treating his talent as a business, as a means to wealth and status, that he had lost touch with the transcendent power of what he did. This 12-year-old girl was about to teach him as much as he would teach her. They made arrangements to begin lessons the following week. Marcus would send a car to pick up Jasmine and bring her to his home studio in Lincoln Park. He would arrange for a piano to be delivered to a location near her home where she could practice daily. Dorothy remained skeptical but agreed to a trial period. As they prepared to leave, Jasmine asked Marcus one more question. She asked him if he thought she played well enough, if she had what it took to be a real pianist. Marcus crouched down so he was looking directly into her unseeing eyes. He told her that what she had was beyond technical skill or training. He told her she had the thing that could not be taught, the ability to find the emotional truth in music and communicate it to others. Everything else, all the technique and theory and repertoire, those things could be learned. But what she had, that was a gift from somewhere beyond understanding, and his job would simply be to help her refine it and share it with the world. Part 3 begins with the reality of what Marcus had promised, crashing into the practicalities of making it happen. His initial burst of inspiration, fueled by the emotional high of Jasmine's performance, had to survive contact with the mundane details of actually transforming a child's life. Marcus had wealth and connections, but he quickly discovered that not everything could be solved with money or a famous name. The first challenge was the piano. He had promised Jasmine access to a quality instrument for daily practice, but her neighborhood had no suitable location. The community center's upright was barely functional, with sticky keys and sections that were permanently out of tune. Marcus considered having a piano delivered to Jasmine's apartment, but Dorothy lived in a third-floor walk-up, and the logistics of getting a proper instrument up narrow stairs was only the beginning of the problem. The apartment was small, shared with Dorothy and Jasmine's two younger cousins, and there was simply no space. After several frustrating phone calls, Marcus found a church 3 blocks from Jasmine's home, whose pastor agreed to house a piano in exchange for Jasmine playing for services occasionally. Marcus purchased a well-maintained Yamaha upright and had it delivered and tuned. He arranged for Jasmine to have a key and access to the church basement practice room from 3 to 7 every afternoon. It was not perfect, the room was cold in winter and the piano was not a concert grand, but it was infinitely better than what Jasmine had before. Dorothy agreed to let Jasmine walk to the church after school, though she worried about her blind daughter navigating even those 3 blocks alone. Jasmine insisted she could do it. And after several practice runs together, Dorothy reluctantly agreed, making Jasmine promise to call the moment she arrived and the moment she left. The lessons themselves began with Marcus confronting just how much work lay ahead. Jasmine's natural musicality was extraordinary, but her technical foundation was full of holes. Mrs. Chen had done her best, but she was not a concert pianist, and she had not caught several problematic habits Jasmine had developed. Her posture at the piano was wrong, creating tension in her shoulders that would lead to injury if not corrected. Her fingering was inconsistent, choosing whatever felt natural rather than what would serve the music best in complex passages. She had almost no knowledge of music theory, could not explain what a diminished seventh chord was or how sonata form worked. These were the building blocks that every serious piano student absorbed over years of study, and Jasmine needed to learn them all while simultaneously advancing her repertoire. Marcus created a rigorous schedule. Jasmine would come to his Lincoln Park brownstone every Tuesday and Thursday evening, driven by a car service that Marcus paid for. The lessons lasted 2 hours, though they often ran longer because neither Marcus nor Jasmine wanted to stop. Marcus drilled her on scales and arpeggios, insisting she practice them in every key until her fingers knew the patterns without thought. He assigned etudes by Czerny and Hannon, the tedious technical exercises that built finger independence and strength. Jasmine hated them at first, could not understand why she had to play these boring repetitions when she wanted to learn more Chopin, more Rachmaninoff, more of the beautiful music that had captured her soul. Marcus explained that those pieces were houses, and you could not build a house without a foundation. The exercises were pouring concrete, unglamorous but essential. To keep Jasmine motivated, Marcus would end each lesson by playing for her himself, performing pieces she wanted to hear and explaining the technical and interpretive choices he made. He would take her hands and place them on the piano so she could feel the vibrations, the physical sensation of sound being created. Jasmine would sit transfixed, absorbing everything, asking questions that showed she was thinking about music in ways that surprised him. She asked why he used more pedal in Debussy than in Mozart, what made a phrase feel complete, how he decided when to push the tempo and when to hold back. These were questions that many of his conservatory students never thought to ask, and answering them forced Marcus to articulate things he had always done by instinct. The progress was remarkable but uneven. Some weeks Jasmine would arrive having mastered everything he assigned, playing through scales flawlessly and demonstrating clear improvement in her technical control. Other weeks she would show up exhausted, barely able to focus because she had stayed up late helping Dorothy with her younger cousins, or because the stress of navigating school as a blind student had drained her energy. Marcus had to learn patience, had to adjust his expectations to account for the fact that Jasmine's life was not like his former students, whose only job was to practice and improve. She was fighting battles he had never had to consider, and her determination to keep showing up despite those obstacles taught him things about resilience that his privileged upbringing had never required him to develop. Dorothy remained cautiously hopeful but protective. She had been burned by broken promises before, had seen well-meaning people float in and out of her granddaughter's life, full of big talk and short on follow-through. She watched Marcus carefully during the first months, looking for signs that his interest would wane, that this was a vanity project that would be abandoned when it became inconvenient. Marcus understood her skepticism and worked to prove himself through consistency. He never canceled a lesson, never showed impatience when Jasmine struggled, never made Dorothy feel like her poverty was shameful or her concerns were unreasonable. Slowly, Dorothy began to trust him, began to believe that maybe this strange partnership might actually be real. At school, Jasmine's music obsession set her apart even more than her blindness already did. Her classmates did not understand why she spent every afternoon at a church playing piano instead of hanging out, why she talked about dead European composers with an enthusiasm usually reserved for pop stars and athletes. Some teased her, called her weird, asked why she wasted time on music nobody listened to anymore. Jasmine tried to explain that classical music was not dead, that it was alive every time someone played it, that Chopin and Beethoven spoke to something timeless in the human soul. But 12-year-olds on the south side of Chicago were not interested in timeless souls, and Jasmine learned to keep her passion to herself, to live in two worlds that had almost nothing in common. Marcus began to understand the isolation Jasmine experienced, the way her gift separated her from her peers and community. He remembered feeling different as a child, but his difference had been cushioned by private schools full of other musically talented kids, by parents who understood and encouraged his obsession, by a world that validated his choices at every turn. Jasmine had none of those buffers. Her world told her constantly in 1,000 small ways that what she loved was not for people like her, that she should lower her sights and be realistic. Marcus made it his mission to be the voice that told her the opposite, that insisted her dreams were not only possible but necessary. Part 4 arrives 6 months into their work together, when Marcus decides that Jasmine is ready for her first real test. He has been contacted by the organizers of the Chicago Young Artists Competition, a prestigious event that draws talented students from across the Midwest. Winners receive scholarships, performance opportunities, and the kind of recognition that can open doors to conservatory programs. Marcus believes Jasmine should compete. Dorothy is terrified. She points out that Jasmine will be up against students who have been training since they were toddlers, students whose families can afford the best teachers and the finest instruments, students who do not have to navigate the world without sight. Marcus acknowledges all of this, but he insists that Jasmine is ready, that she needs to test herself against real competition, that hiding her talent helps no one. Jasmine is both excited and scared. She has never performed in a formal competition, has no idea what to expect. Marcus prepares her carefully, choosing repertoire that showcases her strengths while being technically manageable. They settle on a program that includes a Bach prelude and fugue, a Mozart sonata, and a romantic piece by Schumann. Marcus drills her relentlessly on memory, on recovering if she makes a mistake, on maintaining composure under pressure. He arranges for her to perform in front of small audiences, first just Dorothy and a few church members, then gradually larger groups, helping her build confidence in her ability to communicate through music even when she cannot see the listeners' faces. The day of the competition arrives cold and gray, early spring in Chicago when winter has not quite released its grip. Dorothy and Marcus accompany Jasmine to the competition venue, a recital hall at Northwestern University. The moment they walk in, the contrast between Jasmine and the other competitors becomes painfully apparent. The lobby is full of students in expensive concert attire, their parents hovering with last-minute instructions and encouragement. There are students warming up on practice pianos, their fingers flying through passages with mechanical precision. There are teachers making final adjustments to fingering and interpretation, parents videotaping everything for posterity. Jasmine stands quiet in her simple black dress, the same one Dorothy had saved for months to buy, her white cane folded in her hand, looking small and out of place. Marcus sees several people he knows from the classical music world, teachers and parents whose children he has encountered at other events. Some greet him warmly, though their eyes slide to Jasmine with poorly concealed curiosity and a hint of pity. One woman, the mother of a talented 14-year-old Marcus had taught briefly, actually pulls him aside and asks in a stage whisper if he really thinks it is fair to put that poor blind girl through this. She suggests that Jasmine might be humiliated when she hears the level of playing she is up against. Marcus keeps his voice level as he responds that Jasmine is there to compete, not to be patronized, and that perhaps the woman should worry more about her own daughter's performance than about underestimating someone she has never heard play. The competition proceeds in age divisions, and Jasmine is scheduled to perform in the afternoon session. Marcus and Dorothy sit in the audience through the morning performances, listening to student after student play technically accomplished but emotionally hollow interpretations. They are good, these students, their scales are even and their arpeggios are clean, and they hit all the notes in the right order. But there is something missing, some spark of genuine feeling that would transform the notes on the page into something that reaches past the ears and grabs the heart. Marcus whispers to Dorothy that technique is not enough, that music played perfectly, but without soul is just noise in fancy clothing. Dorothy grips her program tightly and prays that the judges will hear what Marcus hears in Jasmine's playing. When Jasmine's turn comes, Marcus walks her backstage and gives her final words of encouragement. He reminds her that she knows this music, that she has lived inside these pieces for months, that all she needs to do is trust herself and let the music speak through her. Jasmine nods, her face composed but her hands trembling slightly. She asks Marcus if he will be able to hear her from the audience, and he promises her that he will be listening to every note, that she is not alone. Then she is being called, and a stagehand is offering to guide her to the piano, and Marcus has to let her go and return to his seat beside Dorothy, who reaches over and grabs his hand without looking at him. Jasmine walks onto the stage with the stagehand's assistance, and the audience reaction is immediate. There is a collective intake of breath, a rustle of programs as people lean to whisper to their neighbors. Marcus can feel the pity and lowered expectations radiating from the crowd. They see a blind girl, disadvantaged and probably inspirational in that condescending way people love, someone to feel good about applauding regardless of how she actually plays. Marcus wants to stand up and shout at them, tell them to save their pity and just listen. But he forces himself to remain seated, to breathe, to believe in what he knows Jasmine can do. Dorothy beside him is rigid with tension, her lips moving in silent prayer. attention, her lips moving in silent prayer. Jasmine settles at the piano and takes a moment to center herself. The hall is completely quiet, hundreds of people waiting to see what this unusual competitor will produce. Then Jasmine places her hands on the keys and begins the Bach prelude. From the first notes, the atmosphere in the hall changes. This is not the hesitant playing of someone overcome by disability. This is confident, authoritative, clear. Jasmine's fingers move through Bach's counterpoint with a precision that makes the mathematical beauty of the composition transparent. She understands the architecture of the fugue, the way the voices enter and weave around each other, and she makes each voice distinct while maintaining the unified whole. It is Bach played with both intellectual rigor and profound respect, and it is absolutely correct. When she transitions to the Mozart sonata, Jasmine reveals a different side of her musicality. Where the Bach was structured and clear, the Mozart is playful and elegant, full of the classical period's grace and proportion. Jasmine's ornaments are tasteful, her phrasing is natural, and she finds the humor in Mozart's writing, the moments where the composer is essentially winking at the audience. People in the hall are leaning forward now, the pity replaced by genuine attention. Even the other competitors and their teachers, initially prepared to be generously encouraging, are exchanging glances of surprise. This is not just good. This is exceptional. But it is the Schumann that breaks the hall wide open. The piece is one of Kinderszenen, Scenes from Childhood, a work that requires the performer to tap into memory and emotion, to make the listener feel the bitter sweetness of innocence lost and remembered. Jasmine plays it with a vulnerability that is almost painful to witness. She is not just performing notes. She is sharing something true about longing and beauty and the ache of wanting to hold on to moments that slip away. The music breathes and sighs and sings, and when she plays the final, tender notes and lifts her hands from the keys, there is a long silence before the applause begins. Then the hall erupts, people rising to their feet, the sound of clapping and even some cheers washing over the stage. Marcus has tears running down his face and does not care who sees them. Dorothy is sobbing openly, her hand still gripping his. On stage, Jasmine stands to bow, and her expression is one of pure joy. She cannot see the standing ovation, but she can hear it, can feel the vibration of hundreds of people acknowledging what she has just shared with them. Marcus knows in that moment that everything has changed, that there is no going back, that Jasmine Williams has just announced to the world that she is a force to be reckoned with. The judges will have their work cut out for them, but Marcus already knows what the outcome will be. You cannot hear what he just heard and choose anyone else. Unfolds in the aftermath of Jasmine's competition victory, which comes as a surprise to everyone except Marcus and perhaps Jasmine herself. When the results are announced and Jasmine's name is called as the first-place winner in her division, there is a moment of stunned silence before the applause begins. Some of the other parents and students look genuinely happy for her, moved by what they witnessed. Others appear confused or even resentful, as if Jasmine's blindness had given her an unfair advantage rather than being an obstacle she had to overcome. One mother actually approaches Marcus afterward and suggests in a tight voice that perhaps the judges had been swayed by sympathy rather than merit. Marcus looks at her with barely concealed contempt and suggests that perhaps her son should focus on developing some actual musicality instead of just playing scales faster. The victory brings opportunities but also complications. The scholarship that comes with first place is generous, but not enough to cover the full cost of a top-tier summer music program, which is one of the prizes. There are expectations now. Invitations to perform at events where Jasmine will need proper concert attire, quality recordings, materials and resources that cost money Dorothy does not have. Marcus offers to help financially, but Dorothy's pride makes her resistant. She does not want to be a charity case, does not want Jasmine to owe this wealthy white man more than she already does. They have a tense conversation in which Marcus tries to explain that investing in Jasmine's talent is not charity. It is common sense. And Dorothy counters that he cannot possibly understand what it means to accept help when you have spent your whole life being told you are not good enough to deserve it. They reach a compromise. Marcus will establish a formal scholarship fund for Jasmine with clear terms and expectations. She will receive support for lessons, materials, and performance opportunities, but in exchange she will maintain her grades, practice the required hours, and represent herself with professionalism at all events. It is structured as an investment in her future career, not a handout, and this framing allows Dorothy to accept it with her dignity intact. Marcus also begins reaching out to his network, connecting Jasmine with other teachers and performers who can provide specialized instruction in areas where he is less expert. He arranges for a coach who specializes in working with blind musicians to help Jasmine develop strategies for memorization and stage navigation. He contacts conservatory admissions officers to understand what Jasmine will need to be competitive when the time comes to apply. The summer music program is both thrilling and brutal for Jasmine. She is the only blind student and one of the only black students in the entire program. The other participants come from backgrounds so different from hers that she might as well be from another planet. They talk about their previous summers at Aspen and Tanglewood, about their upcoming auditions for youth orchestras and chamber groups, about their private instrument collections and their parents' connections to famous musicians. Jasmine listens to these conversations and feels the weight of everything she does not have, everything she is still learning. But when she sits down at the piano, those differences evaporate. At the piano, she is their equal and often their superior, and she clings to this knowledge when the isolation and culture shock threaten to overwhelm her. She makes one real friend that summer, a Korean-American violinist named Sarah, who is also navigating the program as an outsider. Sarah's parents are immigrants who run a dry cleaning business, and while they have sacrificed enormously for her music education, she does not have the casual wealth and connections of many other students. Sarah and Jasmine bond over shared experiences of feeling like they have to prove themselves twice as hard, of being underestimated and having to exceed expectations just to be taken seriously. They practice together, encourage each other, and form an alliance that helps them both survive the intensity of the program. Sarah also becomes Jasmine's eyes in situations where navigating unfamiliar spaces is challenging, and Jasmine teaches Sarah about interpretation and emotional depth in ways that transform the violinist's playing. Marcus visits Jasmine twice during the summer program, ostensibly to observe her progress but really to make sure she is holding up emotionally. He can see the strain on her face, the exhaustion from constantly adapting to new environments and social dynamics while maintaining her practice schedule and performance commitments. He takes her out for dinner and creates space for her to be honest about her struggles. Jasmine admits that she sometimes wonders if she belongs in this world, if the gap between where she comes from and where she is trying to go is simply too wide to bridge. Marcus shares something he has never told anyone, that he has spent years feeling like an imposter despite his success, that wealth and fame have not erased his insecurities, that everyone in the classical music world is performing a version of themselves that may or may not be true. This conversation marks a shift in their relationship. They are no longer just teacher and student. They are becoming genuine friends, two people who understand something essential about each other that the rest of the world misses. Marcus realizes that Jasmine is teaching him as much as he is teaching her, showing him what music can mean when it is genuinely hard-won rather than assumed as a birthright. Jasmine begins to see Marcus as a complex person rather than just a benefactor, understanding that his privilege has not protected him from doubt and loneliness, that success in the music world can be hollow if it is not built on authentic connection to the art itself. When Jasmine returns home at summer's end, she is changed. She is more confident but also more aware of the challenges ahead. She has seen the level of competition she will face, the resources that other students have at their disposal, the subtle and not so subtle biases that exist in the classical music world. But she has also proven to herself that she can survive and even thrive in environments that were not designed for someone like her. Dorothy notices the change immediately, the way Jasmine carries herself with more authority, the way she talks about her goals with clearer focus. That fall, Jasmine begins her 8th grade year with a new seriousness of purpose. She knows now that a career in music is not just a fantasy but a real possibility, and she is determined to do whatever it takes to achieve it. Marcus intensifies their work together, preparing Jasmine for the next level of competition and performance. They tackle more challenging repertoire, pieces that will stretch her technical abilities and deepen her interpretive maturity. He introduces her to contemporary composers and encourages her to think beyond the standard classical canon. He also begins to involve her in masterclasses and workshops, where she can learn from other musicians and get comfortable performing for critical audiences. Some of these experiences are positive, with teachers and fellow students responding enthusiastically to her playing. Others are discouraging, with people making assumptions about her limitations or expressing surprise that a blind student could perform at such a high level, as if her disability should naturally limit her achievement. Takes place during Jasmine's high school years, a period of intense growth and increasing recognition. By the time she is 15, Jasmine has won several more competitions and has begun to attract attention beyond the Chicago classical music scene. Music blogs and local media run stories about the blind prodigy from the South Side, who is defying expectations and challenging assumptions about who belongs in concert halls. Marcus carefully manages this attention, protective of Jasmine's privacy and wary of narratives that focus more on her blindness than her musicality. He insists that journalists and interviewers engage with her as a serious artist first, that any discussion of her disability be framed in terms of how she has adapted rather than how she has overcome. Because he knows that Jasmine hates the inspiration rhetoric that reduces her to a feel-good story for able-bodied audiences. The attention brings new pressures. There are people who want to meet Jasmine, collaborate with her, offer her opportunities that may or may not be genuine. Dorothy and Marcus work together to evaluate these offers, turning down anything that seems exploitative or that would distract from Jasmine's development. They accept invitations that will genuinely advance her career, like a performance with the Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra and a recording session for a classical music podcast that reaches a national audience. Each of these experiences requires preparation not just musically, but logistically, figuring out how Jasmine will navigate new venues, work with new collaborators, maintain her confidence in unfamiliar situations. High school itself presents challenges that have nothing to do with music. Jasmine attends a public school that is underfunded and overcrowded, where she is still one of the only blind students, and where her academic needs often take a backseat to more pressing crises. She has to advocate for herself constantly, requesting accommodations that should be automatic, pushing back against teachers who have low expectations for disabled students, dealing with technology that does not work reliably, and materials that are not available in accessible formats. The contrast between the world of classical music, where she is celebrated and supported, and her daily school life, where she is just another struggling student in an overwhelmed system, is jarring and exhausting. Marcus becomes aware of these struggles when Jasmine's grades begin to slip. She is so focused on music and so drained by the effort of navigating school that her academic performance suffers. Marcus has a come-to-Jesus conversation with Jasmine, explaining that conservatories care about grades too, that she cannot afford to let her academic work slide no matter how talented she is musically. He offers to hire tutors, and Dorothy reluctantly agrees, recognizing that Jasmine needs support beyond what the family can provide. The tutors help, but they also add more hours to Jasmine's already packed schedule. She is practicing 4 to 5 hours a day, attending lessons twice a week, performing regularly, keeping up with schoolwork, and trying to maintain some semblance of a normal teenage life. Something has to give. What gives is sleep and social connection. Jasmine starts running on 6 hours of sleep a night, fueled by determination and the fear that if she slows down even a little, she will lose her chance. She stops trying to connect with classmates who do not understand her life, stops pretending to be interested in things that feel trivial compared to her musical goals. Sarah, her friend from the summer program, remains a connection through video calls and texts, but they see each other rarely. Dorothy watches her granddaughter transforming into someone singularly focused and increasingly isolated, and she worries about the cost of this dedication. She raises her concerns with Marcus, asking if they are pushing Jasmine too hard, if the pursuit of excellence is worth the sacrifice of a normal childhood. Marcus does not have a good answer. He knows the classical music world demands this level of commitment, that students who want to compete at the highest levels must be willing to give up normal teenage experiences. But he also recognizes that Jasmine's situation is different from his own, that she is carrying burdens he never had to bear, and that the pressure might be unsustainable. He suggests that they ask Jasmine herself what she wants, and when they do, her response is unequivocal. She wants to continue, wants to push forward, cannot imagine stopping now when she is so close to achieving something meaningful. The music is not a burden to her. It is the one thing that makes sense, the one place where she feels entirely herself. Everything else is worth sacrificing for that. At 16, Jasmine performs her first full recital at a prestigious venue in downtown Chicago. Marcus helps her prepare a program that showcases the breadth of her abilities, including works by Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, and a contemporary American composer. The recital is a watershed moment, the point at which Jasmine transitions from being a talented student to being a legitimate young artist. The audience includes music critics, conservatory scouts, and members of Chicago's classical music establishment. The pressure is enormous. This is not a competition where Jasmine is judged against other students. This is a professional performance where she will be evaluated on her own merits, where every flaw will be noted and every strength measured against professional standards. The night of the recital, Jasmine is terrified. Marcus finds her backstage, breathing too fast, her hands shaking. He talks her down gently, reminding her that she knows this music better than anyone, that she has performed these pieces hundreds of times, that the audience is here because they want to hear what she has to say through the piano. He tells her that perfection is impossible and unnecessary, that what matters is connection and truth, that if she plays with honesty and openness, the audience will respond. Jasmine nods, breathes, finds her center. When she walks onto the stage, guided by Marcus to the piano bench, she is still nervous but also ready. What happens over the next 90 minutes is something close to magical. Jasmine plays with a maturity and depth that seems impossible for her age. She is not just technically proficient, though her technique has developed enormously. She is communicative, vulnerable, willing to take interpretive risks that pay off in moments of genuine beauty. The Beethoven Sonata is powerful and architectural, the Chopin Nocturnes are achingly tender, the contemporary piece is bold and exploratory. By the end, the audience is completely captivated. The standing ovation lasts for several minutes, and Jasmine has to return for 2 encores. Marcus, watching from the wings, knows that this is the night that changes everything, the night that proves Jasmine is not just talented but truly exceptional. The reviews are glowing. Critics praise Jasmine's interpretive insight, her technical command, her emotional honesty. Several mention her blindness, but most focus primarily on her artistry, which is exactly what Marcus hoped for. Conservatory representatives reach out, expressing interest in Jasmine's future plans. There are offers for more performances, invitations to festivals and competitions at the national level. Jasmine Williams is no longer a local success story. She's becoming a name that matters in the broader classical music world. And she is only 16 years old, with her most important challenges still ahead. Begins with the reality that Jasmine must now make decisions that will shape the rest of her life. She is in her junior year of high school, the time when serious music students begin applying to conservatories and preparing for the auditions that will determine where they study and with whom. The stakes could not be higher. Acceptance to a top conservatory can launch a career, while rejection can derail years of work and sacrifice. Marcus and Jasmine begin the process of selecting which schools she will apply to, a decision that involves considering not just the quality of the piano faculty, but also the school's track records with disabled students, their financial aid packages, their locations and support systems. They settle on a list that includes Juilliard, Curtis, New England Conservatory, and several other top programs. Each school has different requirements for the audition process, different repertoire expectations, different timelines. Jasmine must prepare multiple programs of music, each piece polished to performance level, while also keeping up with her schoolwork and maintaining her performance schedule. The amount of work is staggering. Marcus helps her create a practice plan that allocates time systematically to each piece, but even with careful planning, there are not enough hours in the day. Jasmine pushes herself to the edge of exhaustion and then past it, driven by the knowledge that this is her one shot, that she cannot afford to be anything less than extraordinary. Dorothy watches her granddaughter disappearing into the music, becoming almost monastic in her dedication. Jasmine has no time for friends, no interest in dating or parties or any of the normal teenage experiences that Dorothy wishes she could have. When Dorothy expresses these concerns, Jasmine responds with fierce intensity that this is what she wants, that normal teenage experiences mean nothing to her compared to the possibility of a career doing what she loves. Dorothy recognizes the determination in Jasmine's eyes, the same determination that got her through losing her sight, through years of navigating a world designed for sighted people, through poverty and low expectations and all the obstacles that should have stopped her but did not. Dorothy knows she cannot protect Jasmine from this choice, can only support her through it. The audition season arrives with brutal intensity. Jasmine and Marcus travel to New York for her Juilliard audition, her first time in the city. The experience is overwhelming, the noise and chaos and sheer density of people difficult for Jasmine to navigate. Marcus stays close, helping her manage the sensory overload while keeping her focused on the task ahead. The audition itself is held in a small room with a panel of faculty members who listen impassively as Jasmine plays. She cannot see their faces or read their reactions, has no idea if they are impressed or bored or skeptical. She can only play her best and hope it is enough. When she finishes, they thank her politely and she is dismissed, left to wonder and wait for the decisions that will arrive in the spring. Curtis is next in Philadelphia, a smaller and more intimate environment, but no less competitive. The Curtis Institute accepts only about 4% of applicants, making it one of the most selective music schools in the world. Jasmine knows her chances are long, but she also knows that Curtis offers full scholarships to all students, which would eliminate the financial burden that weighs heavily on Dorothy. The audition goes well, Jasmine feels like she played her best, but she also knows that every other candidate is exceptionally talented, that the difference between acceptance and rejection often comes down to factors beyond pure ability. While waiting for decisions, Jasmine continues to perform and study, trying not to obsess over outcomes she cannot control. Marcus reminds her that rejection from a particular school does not mean she is not good enough, that admissions decisions involve complex factors including the specific needs of the program in any given year. But Jasmine struggles with this perspective. She has invested everything in this dream and the possibility of failure is terrifying. She has nightmares about being rejected everywhere, about having to give up music and settle for something ordinary, about all the sacrifice and work amounting to nothing. When the acceptance letters begin to arrive, the relief is overwhelming. Jasmine is accepted to 3 of her top choice schools, including New England Conservatory with a significant financial aid package. The Juilliard decision is a waitlist, which is disappointing but not devastating. Curtis sends a rejection, but by the time it arrives, Jasmine has already begun to imagine her future elsewhere. The acceptances validate everything she has worked for, prove that she belongs among the best young musicians in the country. Dorothy cries when Jasmine reads her the acceptance letters, years of worry and fear released in tears of pride and joy. Marcus feels a satisfaction deeper than any he has experienced in his own career. He has helped create something that will outlast him, has been part of a transformation that matters. Jasmine chooses New England Conservatory, drawn by the faculty, the urban environment of Boston, and the school's commitment to supporting diverse students. The summer before she leaves for college, Jasmine performs a farewell recital in Chicago, a thank you to the community that has supported her journey. The church where she practiced for years is packed with people who have followed her story. From Dorothy's friends and neighbors to music teachers and students to members of Chicago's classical music establishment. Marcus sits in the front row beside Dorothy and Sarah, who has traveled from California where she is now studying violin at a prestigious program. The recital is Jasmine's most ambitious yet, a program that includes major works by Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, and Ravel. She plays with the confidence of someone who has earned her place through work and talent and sheer force of will. When she performs the final piece, Ravel's Ondine from Gaspard de la Nuit, one of the most technically demanding works in the piano repertoire, the audience sits in stunned appreciation of what they are witnessing. This piece requires virtuosity, stamina, and an ability to create shimmering colors and textures that evoke water and mystery. Jasmine plays it with a command that would be impressive from a seasoned professional, let alone an 18-year-old about to start conservatory. At the reception afterward, people line up to congratulate Jasmine and wish her well. Former teachers, fellow students, community members who remember her as the shy girl who first touched the piano at the community center 5 years ago. They tell her they always knew she was special, though Marcus wonders how many of them really believed it at the time, how many wrote her off as a feel-good story rather than a genuine talent. But it does not matter now. What matters is that Jasmine has achieved something remarkable, has proven that gifts like hers cannot be suppressed by circumstance, that determination and support can overcome enormous obstacles. In a quiet moment, Marcus pulls Jasmine aside. He tells her that she has exceeded every expectation he had when he first heard her play at the charity gala years ago, that she has become not just a skilled pianist but a genuine artist with something important to say. He tells her that the journey ahead will be challenging, that conservatory will push her in new ways, that the music world can be harsh and unforgiving. But he also tells her that she has everything she needs to succeed, that her gift is real and her work ethic is extraordinary and her resilience is unmatched. He tells her he will always be available if she needs guidance or support, but that she is ready to step forward on her own now, to claim her place in a world that should have been open to her from the beginning. Jasmine thanks him, her voice thick with emotion. She tells him that he changed her life, that without his belief in her and his willingness to invest time and resources in her development, she would still be playing in a church basement for no one but herself. Marcus shakes his head. He tells her that he did not change her life, that her gift was always there waiting to be discovered, that he simply helped remove some of the barriers that were keeping her from developing it. He tells her that she did the work, endured the sacrifices, overcame the doubts and obstacles. He was just fortunate enough to witness it and play a small part in supporting it. As the reception winds down and people begin to leave, Dorothy approaches Marcus. She thanks him with a sincerity that carries the weight of everything they have been through together. She tells him that she was wrong to doubt his commitment, that he has proven himself to be a man of his word and a true friend to her granddaughter. Marcus tells her that Jasmine is lucky to have a grandmother who protected her and advocated for her and made sure she never lost sight of her worth. They embrace, these two unlikely allies brought together by their shared investment in an extraordinary young woman's future. Jasmine stands at the piano, running her fingers over the keys one last time before leaving. In the fall, she will begin at New England Conservatory, where new challenges and opportunities await. She will study with world-class teachers, compete with exceptionally talented peers, continue developing her artistry and technique. She will face moments of doubt and struggle, times when the gap between where she is and where she wants to be seems impossibly wide. But she will also experience moments of transcendence, performances where everything clicks and the music flows through her with effortless power, reminding her why she sacrificed so much for this path. The story that began with a wealthy pianist telling a blind girl from the South Side to play for enjoyment has become something far more significant. It has become a testament to the power of recognizing and nurturing talent regardless of where it appears, to the importance of believing in people when the world tells them they do not belong, to the reality that gifts like Jasmine's cannot be contained by circumstance or prejudice or low expectations. Marcus Holloway learned that his wealth and privilege carried an obligation to open doors for others, that true success in music comes not from personal achievement, but from helping create beauty that would not otherwise exist. Jasmine Williams learned that her dreams were not unrealistic, that the world of classical music could make space for someone like her if she was willing to work hard enough, and if she found people who believed in her potential. Years later, when Jasmine performs her debut recital at Carnegie Hall, Marcus will be in the audience, older now but still moved to tears by her playing. She will have become one of the most talked-about young pianists of her generation, known for interpretations that combine technical brilliance with profound emotional depth. Critics will write about her playing with reverence, audiences will respond with standing ovations, and young musicians will study her recordings to understand how she achieves the effects she creates. Her blindness will be mentioned in profiles and reviews, but it will no longer define her story. She will simply be Jasmine. She will simply be Jasmine Williams, pianist, an artist who speaks through music with a voice that is entirely her own. And it all started because one man decided to listen past his assumptions and really hear what a 12-year-old girl was trying to say through the keys of a piano at a charity gala he almost left early.